The Leatherman was a wanderer famous for his handmade leather suit of clothes, who traveled through the northeastern United States on a regular circuit between the Connecticut River and the Hudson River from roughly 1857 to 1889. Let's talk about it. There is not much known about the Leatherman's origins. Sometime in the 1820s or 60s, a strange man seemed to come out of nowhere into the rocky landscape between New York City and Hartford. He was rough and hairy, and he wandered around on back roads, sleeping in caves. Above all, he refused to explain himself. One newspaper put it, quote, "He is a mystery and a very greasy and ill-ordered one," end quote. Other papers referred to him as, quote, "the animal," end quote, or, quote, "this uncouth and unkempt, what is it?" end quote. His identity remains unknown and controversial. He walked 365 miles repeatedly, year after year. The route took him through certain towns in western Connecticut and eastern New York, returning to each town roughly every 34 days. The Leatherman lived in rock shelters and, quote, Leatherman caves, end quote, as they are now known to locals. He stopped at towns along his 365-mile loop around every 5 weeks for food and supplies. The name Leatherman came from him wearing a hat, scarf, clothes, and shoes made out of leather. It was described as knight's armor made out of baseball gloves. The leather was rough, with leather patches stitched together with long leather strips like a quilt. It was stiff, awkward, stinky, and brutally heavy. One article in the Burlington Free Press that was dated April 7, 1870, refers to him as the, quote, leather-clad man, end quote. He was also given the name the Old Leather Man. The article also states that he spoke rarely, and when addressed, he would simply speak in monosyllables. According to rumors, the Leatherman hailed from Picardy, France. He would communicate mostly with grunts and gestures, rarely using broken English or fluent English. The Leatherman was thought to be French Canadian due to his fluency in the French language and his, quote, broken English, end quote. And there was a French language prayer book found on his person after his death. He would also decline meat on Fridays, giving rise to the speculation that he was Roman Catholic. It is not known how he earned money. One store kept a record of an order, quote, 1 loaf of bread, a can of sardines, 1 pound of fancy crackers, a pie, 2 quarts of coffee, 1 gill of brandy, and a bottle of beer, end quote. He was well known in Connecticut. He was reliable on his rounds. The people on his route would have food ready for him, which he would often eat on their doorsteps. 10 towns that were along his route passed ordinances exempting him from the Connecticut state tramp law that was passed in 1879. The Leatherman survived blizzards and other foul weather by heating his rock shelters with fire. His face was frostbitten at times during the winter. By the time of his death, he had not lost any fingers, unlike other tramps of the area and the time. In 1888, the Connecticut Humane Society had him arrested and hospitalized. This resulted in a diagnosis of, quote, sane except for emotional affliction, end quote. After he was released and he had money and desired freedom, he ultimately died from mouth cancer. On March 24th, 1889, his body was found in his Sawmill Woods cave on the farm of George Dell in the town of Mount Pleasant, New York, near Ossing. The Leatherman original grave in Sparta Cemetery was 16 feet off the Albany Post Road, now U.S. Route 9. On May 25th, 2011, the grave contents were exhumed and reburied at the new site in the cemetery. The grave's contents were exhumed and reburied at a new site in the cemetery. No visible human remains were recovered during the exhumption. The only thing that were found were coffin nails and soil from the original burial plot, which were buried in the new grave. One of the reasons for the exhumptions was the hope that the remains would help determine Leatherman's origins. Nicholas Bellatoni, a University of Connecticut archaeologist and supervisor of the exhumption, cited time, the effect of traffic over the shallow original gravesite and impossible removal of the gravesite material by the ground grading project for destroying all hard and soft tissue in the grave. When he was alive, he was sort of a real-life northeastern Sasquatch. Curious citizens would go into the woods to investigate. They found the old Leatherman's caves. His caves were orderly, complete with primitive fireplaces, sleeping areas, and stores of food, meat, and hickory nuts. Under one slab of rock, he had dug out an apple cellar, and in some forests, he had kept well-tended gardens. Month after month, people would watch the old Leatherman clump past their farms and through their woods and right up the main streets of their town. At mealtime, he would stop at sympathetic households, the same ones over and over, to ask. He would grunt for food. He rarely spoke, but when he did, his words were clipped within the silence. Rumors grew. People speculated that the old Leatherman was French, or French Canadian, or Portuguese. They said that he couldn't speak at all, or that he couldn't speak English, or that he spoke English perfectly but pretended not to. They said that he came from a family in Hartford named Brown. It was also said that he was immune to rattlesnake bites. The more he walked, the more fascinated people became. As residents compared notes, as newspaper coverage snowballed, some facts became clear. The Leatherman was traveling great distances. His network of caves spanned at least 100 miles, and his wanderings weren't random, they were regular and repetitive. In an effort to map his route, people set up sting operations in the woods. They tailed him from town to town. There were also some theories about him. One man claimed that the old Leatherman was disguising himself to evade police, quote, a fugitive from justice and a, end quote. Another theory was that he was a wealthy businessman brought low by a fire, mourning the death of his fiancée. In the mid-1880s, people realized the old Leatherman was walking in a giant loop, which was roughly 365 miles around. The route stretched from the Hudson River in the west to the Connecticut River in the east, and from the mountains in the north to the beaches in the south. Along the way, the route passed through something like 50 towns. One full circuit usually took him 34 days. One newspaper wrote, quote, his coming can be calculated with almost as much certainty as that of an eclipse, end quote. Another said, quote, so regular that his habits, quote, so regular are his habits that it is often said that he's the only sure thing that farmers can depend upon in the age of uncertainty, end quote. Soon he became a full-blown media phenomenon. The Hartford Globe published a front-page article complete with timetables of his travels. In small towns, people lined the streets to watch him pass. School teachers let their students out of class to give him treats. A shop offered a promotion on Leatherman postcards. Artists produced woodcuts and paintings. Photographers hid their cameras in doorways or behind hanging laundry to capture his image. The old Leatherman never sought the attention. He actually avoided it. He went out of his way to skirt the region's big cities, Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and if a homeowner got too nosy, he would walk away and never come back. Once in Woodbury, Connecticut, someone presented the old Leatherman with some recent articles about him. The newspaper account read, quote, he grunted over them, but showed no enthusiasm at finding himself famous, end quote. I will leave you with one origin story that conquered all the rest. It appeared in 1884 in the Waterbury Daily American under the headline, quote, the mystery solved, end quote. Even though it was fiction, it spread far and fast, that it became to be accepted as true. This version states that the old Leatherman was a Frenchman named Jules Burglary. As a young man, he fell in love with the daughter of a wealthy leather merchant, but the merchant disapproved of the match, and so he issued a hest. Jules could marry his daughter only if he joined the company, and over the course of 1 year, proved himself. Things went great until, near the end, Jules made a big investment right before the market crashed. The company was ruined. The marriage was forbidden, and Jules, driven mad by grief, moved to America, where he stitched himself the suit of leather scraps and walked alone in circles for the rest of his life.